can be humble. Just a quick caveat. So, are we ready? Right. Fuck being humble. 3 words you don't hear a lot, but 3 words I want you to repeat after me now. Are we ready? I did this on Tuesday, was it? And the crowds went wild. So don't be British about this. Please don't leave me hanging on stage. I want you to repeat the words with as much gusto as possible, please. Are we ready? Fuck being humble. Okay, that wasn't bad. I'll get you again later on in the session. So hi everyone, I'm Steph Sword-Williams. I'm the founder and author of Fuck Being Humble. And I help people essentially get over the fear of self-promotion and be unapologetically proud of their achievements like these brilliant women on stage. Now I quit my job in advertising in 2018 to be an international public speaker in March 2020, and all international events got cancelled. So that was really fun for me. So I'm absolutely honoured and so happy to be here speaking for the second time this week. Now, and actually when I tell people that I built a business all around self-promotion and it's called Fuck Being Humble, I get a lot of reactions like this. Because heaven forbid we advocated for ourselves, because it's much cooler to take the piss out of ourselves, isn't it, right? Now that's what I'm on a mission to try and change, because when you break down what self-promotion means, self means I, and promotion is just an activity that supports an aim or a goal. So there's no reason to feel embarrassed or awkward for doing it. Now I've been trusted by some of the world's biggest brands to deliver talks, training, keynote speeches, brand partnerships, and a lot of that is because people really need this advice on storytelling. As mentioned, I worked in advertising and I learned the power that storytelling can have for big brands, but now I teach individuals how to tell their own stories to get to the results that they want. So my goal is to help you self-promote so you don't feel arrogant, it's to help you recognize your self-worth, and it's to teach you how to communicate it. And they're the 3 core things we're going to be talking about in today's session. Now, just a bit of a prelude, this is an interactive session. I don't like it when I talk too much and you sit there, zone out, and start thinking about what happened on Love Island last night. So my goal is to get you to be thinking about things in the room so you can implement it as soon as you walk out. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job as a self-promotion expert if I didn't plug myself at the start of the session. So just a quick note to say you can follow me at FBeingHumble across all social channels. You can buy a copy of my book. It's available in print and audio. It's Amazon next day delivery. I actually had somebody message me yesterday say they were already halfway through the book after ordering it, having watched me speak on Tuesday within less than 24 hours. So very happy to hear that. And I am a public speaker to be booked and spoken around, right? So if you work at a company that needs some Fuck Being Humble energy, please do come speak to me after today's session. But today I want to talk to you about, the first thing I want to talk to you about is the importance of showing your uniqueness. When it comes to self-promotion, one of the things that I think we hide behind is FOSS, the fear of sounding stupid. This is a phrase that I coined when I was writing my book, and it's the thing that I think lets so many of us down. We are so worried about sounding stupid when it comes to advocating for ourselves that we minimize ourselves, we water ourselves down, and we undersell ourselves at times when we should be showing up. And what I want you to be more worried about, I don't want you to worry about sounding stupid, I want you to worry about FOBJ. And I know it doesn't sound anywhere near as good, right? But that's the fear of being generic. Because every time you water yourself down and every time you undersell yourself, you blend in like everyone else and you claim you're doing everything to stand out, but you're not. Now, I'd like to do a little bit of an experiment to test how generic we can be with the way that we present ourselves. Now, can everybody stand up on their feet if you are seated? I would like you to stay standing if you ever use these words to describe yourself. Strategic, hardworking, passionate, confident, friendly, motivated, enthusiastic, and I think I've said them all. Right, is that everyone? So everyone in this room uses these words to describe themselves. So how on earth are you standing out? You can all sit down now. I promise that's the only crowd participation I'll make you do. I know you all hate it. I know it's Thursday morning. Work with me. Now, my fiance says that my tombstone is going to read, fucking relentless. And although I know he didn't say that as a compliment at the time, I'd much rather be known for fucking relentless because it tells you I'm tenacious. It tells you I don't give up on things. It tells you I will make shit happen. So when I say all of this and when I encourage you to self-promote, what I'm asking you to do is please let go of the way that society limits you. Because in the UK, in particular, we are extremely humble. And I must caveat, of course, I believe in being humble. If you come up to me today and say, that was an amazing event, I'm not going to turn around and go, I know I'm fucking amazing, right? In that moment, I will be humble. I will be modest. I will be gracious. But what I hate to see is people being so modest, they miss out on opportunities. And if you take a minute right now, I bet you can think of a time where you wish you'd have just spoken up and said something or advocated for yourself. So when I ask you to fuck being humble, it's not that I'm asking you to stand on a chair with a megaphone screaming how incredible you are. I'm just asking you to self-reflect, to identify what the value is that you bring, so that when you get the chance to speak up for yourself, you absolutely do that. Now, I always like to include this slide in my presentation, which is the words you speak become the house you live in, right? If you speak negatively to yourself, you will estimate more negative outcomes. Studies have proven that if you think positively, you are more likely to estimate positive outcomes. So very often what we think of self-promotion is we think we're looking for external validation. But the reason I'm so passionate about speaking to people about this is because I think self-promotion is a confidence-boosting task that will help you all year round throughout your entire career. But you have to decide, what house do you want to live in? Do you want to speak negatively to yourself and see negative results? Or do you want to speak about yourself in an intentional way? So I encourage you, when you're thinking about self-promotion, how can you be intentional with the language that you are saying about yourself? When you are in rooms with key decision makers, with your bosses, with line managers, with potential clients, when you're networking, how are you being strategic and intentional with the words that you use to describe yourself and the value you bring? Now, as I said, this is an interactive session, so I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to encourage you to turn to the person next to you. And I want you to think of 5 words to describe yourself that are not the generic, basic words I previously presented. So you are not allowed to say strategic, hardworking, passionate, enthusiastic, confident, motivated, creative, or friendly. You've got the next 2 minutes. Off you go. Okay, everyone. When I say, okay, everyone, oh, that was quite quick. We're nearly there. There's never a polite way to say shut up and stop talking. But that's what I do love women for, is that we love a natter, right? Now, humour me. Please, can someone shout out some of the words? Extra. Love it. Keep going. Resilient. Entrepreneurial. Visual. Keep it going. Vivacious. I like that. Anything else? Say that again. Opinionated. Yeah, likewise, unsurprisingly. Anyone else? Relentless. Empathetic. Now, galvanizing. Can I just say, when I asked you to do this activity, you all looked at me like you wanted to throw eggs at me, and now I can't get you to stop speaking. No, I did this at an event, and a guy shouted out, "Rock star," and I was like, I think you're in the wrong room, mate. I'm really sorry. I don't think you're meant to be here. But this is a hard task, I'll be honest, it is. There's a reason I'm making you do it in the room, because if I told you to go do it as homework, you probably wouldn't do it. But what I would recommend you do is go away and ask the people in your life how they see you. Because, like my fiance, they will be honest, but also, often we can't see ourselves in the way other people see us, especially if we're struggling with low confidence, and especially if it's not something we're used to doing. So the key learning from that section is just figure out what makes you, you. Nobody has lived your life. Everybody has a unique experience. Everyone has a unique identity. Nobody owns words, right? So go do some research. Go look at the people you admire. What are the things that you love about them? Are there characteristics that align with you? But when you are being intentional in the workplace about how you want to be seen, people will start to associate you with those words. But if you're just expecting people to know that you are ambitious or that you are inventive, you've got to be the person driving that narrative. I'm going to say that about 10 times in today's session. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you about is the importance of being ready to sell yourself. Now, I've been including Jennifer Coolidge in my presentations for the last 5 years, but only in the last few years have people started to laugh at it. And I was like, babes, she's been an icon since Legally Blonde, for the millennials in the room. But the important thing that I often remind people is you can have all the self-belief in the world. So self-belief is, I believe I can do something with or without the skills. I'll figure it out. I have a lot of self-belief. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, right? But the goal when it comes to making your ideas heard, building your reputation, is to get shared belief. And this is a phrase that I came up with, which is essentially getting other people to believe you can do something with or without the skills. So you might be really confident in that, but you have to find a way to show people that you can do things, even if you've never done it before. You need to be convincing them all year round of all the great things you're doing, so that when you do pitch the idea that is maybe beyond what you might be able to do right now, they are more likely to say yes to it. And one of the things that I often talk about, and it's something that's talked a lot about in the advertising and marketing industry, is sell your benefits, not just your features. And what I mean by that is I meet a lot of people in networking situations. I'll be like, oh, what do you do? And they're like, I'm an account manager. I work on projects in the creative field. I'm like, cool. It's not really that memorable, is it? What you're telling me is you're telling me the features. You're not selling the benefits. Now, the best example I can give of this, and I thought I'd do a marketing example because we're at a marketing festival, is when you look at Samsung and Apple, they have spent years trying to dominate the mobile phone industry, right? They've been competing for years. But when you look at Samsung's advertising, it only ever shows their features, right? It very rarely sells the emotion, right? They'll show you can use a touchscreen pen, you can see the weather, you can write notes. But when you look at Apple's advertising, they rarely show you the products, they show you the life you could have with their products. They sell you the dream. They sell the benefits of their brand. They show you the underwater photos you could take on their iPhone without even showing you the product, right? So what I want you to do is be more Apple and sell the dream of you, right? And to do that, you have to bring your input to life. Now, when I was working in advertising, I was working as an account manager, I was an account director, I was a business director, and one of the jobs I worked on was on a university for Stoke-on-Trent. Is there anyone from Stoke-on-Trent in the room? Okay, great. One of the selling points for Staffordshire University is that it's got the best train lines to get you out of there. So that was what I was dealing with selling this university, right? So it was an account I worked on for 2 years. I'm very proud of all the success we had on it. And one of the jobs that I had to do was completely redo the university prospectus, which if you take yourself back to those days, that's a 300-page document. We ripped it to shreds. We completely redid the photography, the design, the copy, all of the content, brand new. And when I came to speaking about it, I said, I project manage the production of the university prospectus, including the design, photography, and copy. Factual, yes, that's what I did. But if I've only done one thing after working on a project for 12 months, I think we've got a problem. And what I was doing in this moment was underselling myself. And what I actually had to do was ask myself, what's my 10% edge? Now, I'm not going to claim that this is my thinking. This is a great quote from Amy Porterfield. She's a digital expert. And she encourages, especially entrepreneurs, to ask yourself, what's your 10% edge? I'm not asking you to be the best in the room. I'm just asking you, how do you go above and beyond just slightly differently to other people? And when I reflected on that, I actually went away and wrote a different description about my work. And I said, to deliver a real overview of the university's offering, I conducted 27 interviews over 4 weeks, which influenced the entire creative and content direction. Alongside this, I coordinated multiple photo shoots, 3 photo shoots, managing external suppliers, and delivered the client an asset bank of over 300 pieces of content. Can you see the difference between example 1 and example 2? It didn't take me much longer to get to this version. All I needed to do was self-reflect on what were those things that I did to go above and beyond. And what I love about this example is there's no ROI results, right? I'm not talking about how it helped to increase the university's applications by 200% or any of those things. I'm merely telling you the detail I did to go above and beyond on that, right? So when I share this, it's because I'm encouraging you and reminding you that your work won't always speak for itself. This is the biggest myth that I think we hear in the industry. If you work hard, you'll go far. In my TEDx talk, I said, why is it that so many of us work hard and don't go far? And I believe it's because storytelling is the side of it. Storytelling is the self-promotion part of it, which is going to help you get the results that you want. Now, to give you another example of this, and I talk to my partner about this a lot, he's a product designer, and he thinks when he posts a photo of his work online, the internet will break. And sadly, he's a good designer, but he's not that good, right? And I often remind him that if you only post an image of your work and say, oh, so happy to work on this, it's been great, doesn't really tell me the story. Now, this example of me, as you can see, I'm doing a job for Puma Women. I have a Britney mic, one of my favorite times. There are people on either side of me, so I'm obviously hosting an event. But if I just shared this image online or with my network and said, great to work with Puma, what you wouldn't actually know about this success was that it was the first ever Puma and Liberty collection, and they'd asked me to host the launch event. We discussed things like being a founder, confidence and resilience. My goal was to drive footfall to the stores as there was a live audience there. And it was the second job I'd done with Puma following the good work. I've actually worked with them for the last 4 years. We've done some great work together. Now, what I would say about this is, even if you don't care about the live audience in the store, you might care that actually I discuss things like being a founder and resilience because that's something that you're working on with your team or the people you know. So the more details we tell about our story, the more likely we can build an emotional connection with people. And on that note, when we're thinking about emotional connections, it's extremely important to get your feedback. Now, I always say to people, I don't actually ask for feedback. I ask for positive reviews. And that's how I think I build unapologetic confidence. I don't want you to tell me how I can grow, to be honest. I just want you to tell me how good I am, right? And I often go collect positive reviews. One of them being, keep doing what you're doing because you're building a generation of strong, empowered women. Now, when I got that message, I was like, was that meant for me? Well, that's meant for me, right? But actually, what testimonials and feedback shows you is that we don't always see ourselves in the way other people do. And you best believe that I copy and paste that and put that in every email and pitch deck when I'm speaking to people. So when you're struggling with your confidence or you're struggling with anything I've talked about today, at least go get other people to talk about how great you are, because that's going to help you with your self-promotion story. And when you want to talk about that, you can say, people celebrate me for. People have described my work as. I'm often the person people go to for the X reasons, right? So it doesn't have to be you always driving the self-promotion narrative. You can get input from other people and feel more confident doing it that way. And then when it comes to actually sharing that, I know this sounds really basic and obvious, but you need to practice, 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 practice. Everything we do feels wild or strange or not something we've ever done before if we've never done it before. Rob Moore says, none of us were good at sex the first time, but it didn't stop us from trying again. Right? And I think it's an important thing to remember with anything we're scared of in our career, whether it's public speaking, whether it's speaking up in meetings, whether it's self-promoting, is that we will never get better until we continue trying it. We often think we need to be confident in something before we try it, and that's not the case. The first thing we need is courage. We need to have courage to step forward to do that thing, and confidence develops the more we do it, right? And then the other thing I'd recommend is practicing with other people. So when it comes to your self-promotion, whether it's practicing with your work bestie or your boss before you go into that meeting, or whether it's practicing with your friends before you go pitch to your client, do that. If it's recording yourself, and when I say recording, I do mean filming yourself. You should film yourself speaking, sharing your ideas, because you will hear back how and when you don't sound confident. And if you can't stand the thought of watching your reflection in a video, at least voice record it, because you will hear when your voice sounds least confident, when you need to dial things up, when you should put more emphasis on things. And finally, if you are ever presenting, sharing your ideas, use visuals for prompts. I am someone who I didn't enjoy doing a TEDx talk because I love having slides. My slides are my crutch. They're my storytelling secret that I think help me come alive on stage. So when you are sharing your ideas and putting them out there, have visuals, have notes if you need them, whatever it is that's going to make you feel more confident in the moment. And the other thing that's extremely important if you're wanting to raise your profile and build trust with people is to regularly remind them of the progress you're making. I do a Q1 update, I do a Q2 update. Nobody's asking for that, by the way. I don't have a finance director, I don't have a board of directors. People aren't asking for that, but I'm aware that throughout the year we see so much content, we hear so much noise, and if you're working remotely right now, you need to be mindful of proximity bias. And that is where people who are in the spaces and present with decision makers are more likely to be favored. Now, don't worry, I've not been hired by your boss to tell you to get back into the office. I am just reminding you that your self-promotion, if you're working remotely, needs to be working double as hard, because people can't actually see the work you're doing. And when you are on Zoom calls and when you are connecting with people, be intentional with the small talk. So when you jump on a call and they're like, how's your day been going? Talk about that success. Yeah, really good. We just got amazing feedback from the client and they've just given us a second project. In 10 seconds, you've self-promoted. And that, throughout the year, if you keep doing that, that compounds. That builds trust. That makes people think, oh yeah, they actually updated me on that thing. If you wait to the end of the year for your performance review, when you're burnt out, you're exhausted, you don't even think you've brushed your teeth well, right? You're going to forget all these great details that you're doing. So give regular updates regularly. And I know when I worked full time, if I got nice feedback, I'd just forward it to my boss and go, this is nice. Right? Sometimes we overthink what we actually need to say when it comes to building that trust and building that respect from other people. So now what I'd like you to do is I want you to think about a recent project, a success or an achievement, and I want you to think about what did you do differently to make it a success? So what was your 10% edge? How did you make that thing a brilliant outcome? I'm going to encourage you to turn to the person next to you, and you should do this because the more you get confident speaking to strangers about this, the easier it will be to go back into your offices or to pitch to your clients. You've got the next 2 minutes, off you go. Okay, everyone? Everyone? Everyone. So the key learning from that section is stop commentating, stop saying what people can already see, and start storytelling. Tell me the story that I can't see, all of the hard work that you're doing, because all of this helps to build up trust so that when you do ask for that pay rise, when you do pitch an idea, when you do suggest a completely new job role in the company, or again, if you're pitching outside. In fact, how many of you are self-employed in the room? And how many of you are working for companies? Great. Okay, good. I sense that would be the case. Now, the third thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is the importance of making your ideas unforgettable, which I have no doubt they probably already are, right? But one of the things that I see a lot is really amazing ideas getting lost because they just weren't clear, right? And I think this happens a lot. I think we get really excited about ideas. We're like, yeah, this is amazing. This is going to change the world. Company's going to love it. But we don't deliver it in a way that the audience we're speaking to really cares about it, and we don't make it easy for them to understand it. So I always encourage people to think about when you speak and when you share your idea, what is it that you want people to think, feel, and do off the back of it, right? And that is where you always need to start. And then when you're thinking about that, I want you to think about the intention of your presentation, your idea, what you're trying to achieve. Because there are many different things that we can do with storytelling and sharing ideas. We might be trying to educate people. We might be trying to motivate people. We might be trying to inspire them. We might be trying to provoke their thinking. We might be trying to excite people, empower them, entertain them, or even sell to them, right? But how you deliver your idea, dependent on these outcomes, is very different. So if I'm trying to provoke thinking in someone's, completely provoke their outlook, that would be completely different to how I might empower someone. So when we're thinking about the ideas we're sharing, we first need to think about what is the output we're trying to achieve? What is the next decision we want the people we're speaking to go and do off the back of that? And then my top tip after this, and it sounds obvious, but honestly we don't do it enough, can it be explained in 10 words or less? When I say fuck being humble, that's it really. You just go off and everybody goes and talks about it, and it might be divisive and people might not like it, but you're still talking about it. It creates some reaction, it creates some emotion. That's 3 words. 3 words I get across my business and my company values, right? So I want you to be thinking about when you're sharing your ideas, I would write it out long form, absolutely, get it all down, and then keep cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down, and see if you can get it down to 10 words or less, because you need other people to be able to go on and share your idea when you're not in the room. And if it's too lengthy or too complicated, it's going to end up with people reacting like this, right? And that's not what we want for your ideas. So it's really important to be thinking about how can I make sure that when I'm sharing my ideas, it's easy to understand. Now, the second thing that is even more important is to connect it to the business language and objectives if you want to get buy-in. And this is the biggest mistake people make. I don't care if your idea is really fun. I don't care if Gen Z will like it, right? I'll tell you what people care about. Your businesses that you work for or your potential clients care about, can you boost sales with this idea? Can you reduce costs? Will it help to gain coverage? Will it help to attract a new audience? Will it create a new opportunity? Or will it help to build credibility? I want everybody to take a photo of this slide now, because this is what you need to be connecting your ideas back to in order to build trust with the people you're speaking to. You need to be thinking about, how am I speaking the business language? How am I showing the company that this is not just another fun idea I've had on the way to work? I'm trying to reach the business's objectives and goals, whether that's your client's objectives or whether that's the company's overall objectives. And if you don't know what they are, go back today and go ask your company, what's our objectives for the next 6 to 12 months? How are you measuring my success? What does good look like? Ask those questions, because it is difficult to get buy-in on ideas if you don't know what it is that's going to be part of the sign-off process. And I guess my number one thing that I always get people to think about is, what will your CEO or finance director think? Right? Because at the end of the day, your boss might be impressed, the next manager might be impressed. You could get a bunch of people rallying behind you, but it's the decision makers with the money that are going to decide whether this goes through. So you have to put yourself in their perspective and what they care about. And if you don't know what they care about, you need to make it your mission to do that. Now, the other recommendation I give is to pick holes in your idea before they do. And again, it might sound obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people bounce in. They're like, this is the best idea since sliced bread. And they've not thought about, what are the holes in this idea? Now, I'm not telling you this so that you have a self-doubt spiral and you convince yourself your ideas are shit. That's not what we're going for, right? I'm asking you to do this in preparation so that when you get in the room and if you are questioned or you're challenged, you're ready to respond in that situation. Now, there's a brilliant book I'd recommend reading after you've read mine, called Never Split the Difference. Has anyone read it? It's by Chris Voss, and he's an FBI hostage handler, and he teaches you how to negotiate like an FBI hostage handler. One of my favorite tips he gives in the book is the importance of speaking down when you're trying to get buy-in instead of up. So when we're unsure, we'll often say, I've got this idea if you're interested in it, speaking up. But when we're confident in ourselves, we'll speak down, and we'll say, I've got this really great idea, and we need to book in some time to talk about it. So he gives loads of great tips like that, but one of my favorite tips in the book is he gives this example of doing an accusation audit technique. And this is where you think of all of the accusations that might get thrown at you before you share your idea, so that when you're in the room, you say them before the other person does. And the reason you do that is not to state where the obstacles are, but it's to show them that you get what they worry about. It's to build the trust, it's to burst their problem bubble before they even get the chance to share the problems they're worried about. So let's say at the moment your company's on a cost-saving initiative, and the idea that you want to share is going to be quite costly, right? You would go into that room and you'd say, before I get started, I know that the overall objective for the business this year is to be cost-saving, but I'm going to talk you through an idea where if we invest in this now, we could save money for the next 5 years, right? You've burst the problem bubble before they've even had a chance to throw it at you, right? And what that does is it helps to build that onboarding trust. It makes them feel like, oh, you speak my language, we get this. And even if they do then want to say their thing, that's fine. And I always say to people, if you ever get your no's, which you probably will, it's more common to get a no than a yes. That's like the number one thing they tell you in sales. It is more common to get a no than a yes. So I always say to people, take no as a not right now. I can't tell you how many times I've had no's, and then a few years later, those people have come knocking back on my door, and I've not put them on a bad list, like I'm never speaking to you again, like go burn in hell. It's sure, let's talk about budget. Where can we go with this, right? And so this is really important to remember, but when you do get a no, it is essential that you ask as many questions as possible as to why that no has come about. And again, not to be annoying, but more so you have clarity. And I share this because often when we get a no, we can go away and be like, well, it was obviously because I didn't deliver it well, or it's obviously because it was me, or it's obvious because he obviously doesn't take me seriously, or whatever these things are. We let our insecurities direct or channel our energy in the wrong way. We worry about all the things that aren't the case. We tell ourselves the reason that didn't pan out is because we're the problem, when there could be 100 external factors that have nothing to do with you, and that's why you're getting a no. So ask the questions that will give you clarity so that when you want to, you can actually re-pitch that idea back in the future. And this is something that I don't think we do enough because of our egos. When we have a bruised ego, we go, well, there's no point. They always say no. What's the point? With that attitude, they will always say no, right? So I need you to be thinking about how can you re-pitch ideas? And I know this is a female stage show, and I know we have some men in the room, but I just think we need to have a bit more big dick energy, guys, right? Honestly, the amount of men, no shade to, no man bashing in here, but the amount of men that do take up space, that have their ideas shared. In fact, Cindy Gallop said recently in an interview, women should get hired for being women because men have been getting hired for being mediocre men all these years, right? And the same goes for sharing ideas. I see so many men taking up space when it could be women, but it's because we're worried and we're doubting ourselves and we're getting ourselves into self-doubt spirals that shouldn't be happening, right? So go get the clarity and advocate for yourself and reshare those ideas until you get the yeses. Please don't take no. Please don't take no as the final answer. So now for the next activity, what I want you to do is I want you to think of an idea that you love, that you've seen recently. And I want you to think about what made it stand out to you and what can you learn from it. What is a recent campaign, a recent TV ad, a recent project, a brand, whatever it is? What is something you really loved and why is it standing out to you and what can you learn from that? I'd recommend that you turn to the person next to you. You've got the next 2 minutes. Off you go. Okay, everyone. Everyone. We've got less than 10 minutes. I need to wrap this up because I have one final section. And I always overfill presentations because I always want you to go away talking about how incredible this session was. But the key learning from that section is make your ideas irresistible. Now, the final thing that I wanted to talk to you today, before you leave today's session, is to mix up your techniques. And no, I'm not asking you to dress up like a worm on the runway show like Heidi Klum did, which was pretty iconic. But what I am asking you to think about is, a lot of people come to me and say, I've tried everything. And you know what I say to that? Bullshit, right? No, you haven't. You haven't. Have you picked up the phone? Have you asked someone else to do it? Have you done something uncomfortable? No, you haven't. I'll tell you what you've done. You've done everything you feel comfortable doing. I'm a tough love agony aunt. Don't come to me if you want any soft love, right? I don't sugarcoat things. You've done everything you've already tried in the past that you feel comfortable doing, and that's why you're not seeing the results, right? So the next time you get no's, you can choose to tap out and be like, whoa, life is me. There's no point in doing this. Why do I even bother? Or you can lean into it and be like, right, how am I going to make this happen and what do I need to do to get better results? Now, one thing I would recommend, and this is something when I was writing my book, I interviewed a range of trailblazers, and one of them was Shannon Peter, who was the editor at Stylist magazine. And she recommended that you go beyond your first 5 minutes idea until you get to the best outcome, because very often we think we've cracked it in 5 minutes, and we're like, well, how could I possibly think of anything better than this, right? And I know because I do this myself. Now, I've been taking my brand out to the US, and I'm starting with New York because, let's face it, I just want to live out my Carrie Bradshaw dream. And when I wanted to announce this, I created this graphic, and I said, FBH, NYC, we're going to New York, wonderful. Inside of me, I was like, this doesn't quite feel very fuck being humble. My partner, who is a designer, was very like, yeah, that's perfect, just post that. That looks really slick and nice. Yeah, done. But I was like, it just doesn't feel like my best idea. So I went again and I comped my face on the Statue of Liberty with a mic. And I would say that probably got more shares than the bland graphic prior. And whilst that was a bit rough and ready and DIY, the next thing that I did was this year in February, I actually went to New York to hijack New York Fashion Week. And I made my own bomber jacket, which I'm actually wearing today. I hand-stitched the letters. It took me three hours to do so. And I walked around the streets getting papped, and everybody started talking about fuck being humble. Now, that was the third idea after 6 months of ideating how can I get my brand out in the States. I am coming up with better ideas the more I let it simmer. So please don't think that that first idea, because it got shot down, that, well, that's it and it's done. The more you let things simmer, the better results you're going to see, right? And the other thing I'd say, and I guess what I learned from that, is practice in spaces where people don't know you. So practice sharing your ideas, experimenting in networking situations, in crowds and spaces. When I went to New York, I had this, if you think I'm confident now, you should have seen me in New York. I had this alter ego. I was like, I don't care. I don't know anyone in New York. This isn't embarrassing. It's more embarrassing for me to go stand in London Fields, which is round the corner from my house, doing what I did, than it is to do it in New York. I had this I don't give a shit attitude, and I need you to go find spaces where you feel like that too. And straight after this session, I'm actually running across to the Truman Brewery to speak at Protein Studios to speak at D&AD New Blood Festival. And I wanted to share this great example where New Blood Festival is specifically for 16 to 25-year-olds trying to break the creative industry. D&AD have selected shortlisted people who can exhibit there, right? There were 2 guys that walked around D&AD Festival dressed as old men with a sign that says, "We're too old for New Blood, but check out our portfolio anyway." I don't remember anyone else's work from that festival that year, but I remember these 2. Now, I'm not asking you to walk around this conference dressed as old people or in any form of fancy dress, but I am encouraging you to think about, when I want to get my ideas out there, where can I do it where I'm going to get the most reach, where I might get people speaking. I was thinking today, I should have bought a red megaphone and walked around getting everybody to shout out of it. This is a captive audience. This is a space where you could be amplifying your ideas, so utilize it and go out there and share things. Now, this year for Mental Health Awareness Week, I launched a campaign called Their Loss. Studies have shown that people who lose their jobs are 3 times more likely to develop mental health conditions. Now, that's not to scare anyone if anyone's going through that process, but having seen the amount of layoffs and redundancies that are happening around the world, I wanted to create a campaign that would help change and reframe that experience. So I came up with the line, "Their loss. It's not your loss, it's their loss. You were too fucking good for them anyway," right? And I did that because I really wanted to help empower people through a difficult process. I launched a t-shirt collection where 100% of the profits were donated to CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably, which is a suicide prevention charity. And when I shared this, I was like, well, obviously people are going to be buying it immediately. No one bought it. No one bought the t-shirt for ages. I think the campaign was live for 3 weeks, and I'd sold 8 t-shirts, and I have a following, an online following of over 200,000 people, right? This was a hit to the ego, and I was like, oh, what am I not doing right here? And actually, what I realized, this was an experiment for me to think about, how can I get this idea heard? How can I get this idea? Because I am passionate and I've put a lot of time and effort in this and I really care about it. And what I learned on the process is you have to keep talking about your brand, about your ideas, about everything you're doing so much until you get bored of it, right? Because it's never enough, because you never know who might be able to help you. I even pretended to be a stylist and put together little styling outfits, which actually did a really good job. This sold a lot of t-shirts. But one of the posts that I shared that actually had the most engagement and converted a lot of people was when I shared that I'd lost 4 opportunities in 7 days and just how much it sucked. It was the most engaged piece of content I've shared this year. I had so many people reaching out to me to say they're feeling the same, they're struggling, all of these things. And I often joke that I think my audience like to see me doing worse than doing well. But what I realized is it's not that. They want to see themselves in me. And so when you're sharing your ideas and you're sharing things, people have to emotionally connect with what it is that you're putting out there. And that might mean you have to do things that you don't feel comfortable doing, but guess what? You'll probably see better results. And if I'd have just stuck at those 8 t-shirts on that day, I wouldn't have then gone on to sell 60 t-shirts in the space of a week after thinking about how I could really creatively storytell this campaign. So I share all of this to say, tell people when you are struggling, because when I meet people and they're like, yeah, I'm really busy, and you're not busy, that's stupid, right? People won't help you if they don't know that you need help, right? And it was when I told people I'm actually struggling to sell these t-shirts that people stepped up and was like, I'll share it on my stories, I'll do this, I'll do that. And it actually amplified the campaign much better because I put my ego aside in that process. So I recommend you share when you're struggling because people are more understanding. They think of ways to support you, and they mention your name when you're not in the room. And that is what I want from everything that I teach. I want people to be going away and be like, you should work with her because she is incredible and she shares amazing ideas. So everything I've shared with you today is to remind you that discomfort is temporary, but the payoff can be extraordinary. So you have to learn to put aside that ego, to put aside that anxiety of, oh, well, they said no the first time. So what? If you ever want to get a yes, you have to keep sharing. You have to keep self-promoting. You have to keep advocating for yourself. I'm going to wrap up the session by summarizing the 4 key takeaways that we've discussed today. Feel free to take a photo of this slide as a memory of today's session, but it is be more intentional. Stop using basic, generic words like strategic, hardworking, creative, enthusiastic, friendly, and motivated. You have got more to yourself than that. Show your uniqueness. The second thing is be ready to sell yourself at all times. I got a fiance by handing out my business cards in a park when I was drunk on a Saturday, right? Trust me, it works. Make your stories compelling enough to the people you're speaking to. And what I mean by that is talk about the business benefits. What will your ideas lead to? Boosting sales, gaining coverage, attracting a new audience, increasing a new opportunity. What is it that will come from your ideas? And finally, mix up your approach. Stop saying you've done everything when you absolutely haven't. Make sure that you're channeling yourself, you're experimenting, and you're trying new things. I always end my presentation by saying self-promotion isn't a dirty word, so please don't ever let people make you think it is. One final plug for the road. Please do make sure you're following @FBeingHumble on socials. Feel free to tag, reshare, talk about today's session. You can buy a copy of my book. It's available in print and audio, but if you didn't like my voice today, don't get it in audio. And please do book along to future talks and workshops. I very quickly just wanted to flash up, grab a photo of this slide. These are all of the different talk topics that I deliver sessions on. Please go away and tell your bosses, your line managers to book me as a speaker. This is my main line of work. I am on a mission to tell anyone and everyone about fuck being humble. That is everything from me, so thank you all for listening.